That one's working. All right.
The switch.
They muted the moderator. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and participating in RAC. Today, this meeting is being webcast and recorded, and we do have a full agenda today, so I'm going to ask that everybody please keep your comments to 2 minutes. We're going to do introductions here in just a few moments. This public forum is going to conclude at 1 p.m. The cafe is open till 2, so there'll be plenty of time to get lunch afterwards. We'll just take a couple minutes and go around the table. Again, if you could just limit our comments to 2 minutes. I'd like everybody to introduce themselves briefly. I'll start with myself. I'm Jennifer Smith. I'm the Chief of Staff here at the Water Management District. I started in April, and I came here from DEP, where I served for the past 17 years in the Southeast District overseeing the regulatory programs. I'm going to turn it over to my right.
Check, 1, 2. Wait, there we go. I'm Drew Bartlett, Executive Director, South Florida Water Management District. Hey, thanks for signing up for this, and look forward to having lots of conversations into the future, today and into the future. So, let's get going. Sean?
Good morning, Sean Cooley. I'm the Director of the Office of Communications and Public Engagement. My office oversees RAC and the Governing Board, so feel free to reach out to me or anyone on our team to ask any questions or if you have anything you'd like to raise. Thank you.
Good morning. Jennifer Leeds. I'm the Interim Division Director for Ecosystem Restoration and Capital Projects. I've been at the Water Management District a little over 20 years, all of it working on Everglades restoration. Happy to have the RAC back and looking forward to a very good discussion today.
Good morning, I'm John Mitnick. I'm the Chief District Engineer and the Assistant Executive Director here at the Water Management District. Welcome, everybody. I haven't been here quite as long as Jennifer has, but I've been with the agency for a number of years now and looking forward to the discussions to come with this group.
Hey, Kara, real quick, I'm going to have staff finish up, and then we'll go around for the committee members.
Good morning. I'm Paula Cobb, General Counsel for the Water Management District. Look forward to the discussion.
Hi, my name is Yvette Bonilla, another RAC coordinator.
Kara, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kara Kapp with the National Parks Conservation Association. We are a national, nonpartisan nonprofit. We've been advocating for America's national parks for about 100 years. I have managed MPCA's Everglades Restoration Program for the past 6 years. And MPCA has been involved in RAC in its various forms over the years. This is my first time sitting on certainly this board and especially in this new capacity. So I'm very excited about the dynamic conversations we're going to have here and look forward to working with all of you.
And good morning. I'm Angela Chalette with the Office of Ag Water Policy in the Florida Department of Ag and Consumer Services. Our primary job is working with water supply, water quality, implementing of best management practices for agriculture. We are continuing to look forward to opportunities to coordinate with the different agencies, and I definitely want to thank the district for providing this venue and this forum for us to all collaborate and, get public comment and input on the many things that we do as we go forward, looking at the basin management action plans for the lake, Caloosahatchee, St. Lucie, the Lake Okeechobee operations schedule revisions that are happening now, and also looking for regional solutions to a lot of the issues that we have ongoing.
Good morning. James Erskine, Everglades Coordinator with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I've had the honor to serve on some of the previous versions of the RAC, and I'm glad to be part of this forum today. With the agency, with FWC, as Everglades Coordinator, I lead an interdisciplinary team in the agency that handles the agency's input on Everglades restoration projects and Everglades restoration matters. So thank you, and have a great day.
Good morning. I'm James Evans. I'm Director of Natural Resources for the City of Sanibel. I've been with the City of Sanibel, it'll be 20 years in January, so a little bit of time with the City of Sanibel. I'm a biologist and a resource manager by training, and I participate on the working group, the science coordination team of the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the RAC.
Good morning. My name is Doug Gaston. I'm with Audubon, Florida. My title is Northern Everglades Policy Analyst. I'm part of the Everglades Policy team. I joined Audubon in December last year, so it's only been coming up on a year. But I'm a recovering corporate lawyer who started coming to Florida about 20 some odd years ago to enjoy the water and the fishing and boating and warm weather in February. Just briefly, over the years, I've seen some of the same things going on that I've seen happen in the Northeast where I grew up fishing on the Chesapeake Bay and the Delaware Bays. And so I wanted to get involved and see what I could do to help to try to preserve some of these natural resources that are so important to our lifestyle. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to working with the committee. Thanks.
Good morning, RAC family. My name is Adam Gelber. I'm the director of the Office of Everglades Restoration Initiatives, part of the Department of the Interior. The OERI was established back in 1996 by the Water Resource Development Act. Basically, in a nutshell, my role is to facilitate the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force and work with the interior agencies towards achieving the goals of restoration. I've been almost a lifelong person here in South Florida, in Miami since the early 70s. On my spare time, I fish the park. I was down there on Saturday and enjoy what the park has to offer and the importance of the Florida Bay. And achieving those goals here is quite important to me personally and from a professional standpoint as well. And I enjoy working with all of you at the table. Thank you.
Good morning, Susan Goslin, Osceola County Natural Resources Manager. I started working in the upper watershed before the Kissimmee River restoration, doing species surveys, and have worked as a consultant to the district and various places in the district. I've been around for a while. Happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Inger Hansen, and I work for Florida Department of Environmental Protection. I've worked for them a long time, 25 years or so, and most of the time I worked on Everglades restoration work. Really interesting to me. I'm an engineer by training, and I have never sat on RAC before, but I look very much forward to it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Lee Hefty. I'm director of Miami-Dade County's Division of Environmental Resources Management, also known as DERM. I've been with DERM a few months shy of 30 years. When I started, I wore a bathing suit. Now I wear a business suit. But we're glad to be here. I think it's really important working together to solve the water resource issues that we hear in South Florida. So glad to be here.
Good morning. My name is John Lai. I'm the president and CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce. I also represent the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers, which is made up of 7 chambers, represents over 300,000 jobs in Southwest Florida. We're very thankful to serve on the RAC, and I'm also very, very excited about learning more and taking it back home. We certainly know firsthand what the economic impacts of water quality is, and so it's a big deal to us in Southwest Florida. So thank you again.
Morning. My name is Grant Lanham. I'm the Vice President of Environmental Safety and Security at Sugarcane Growers Cooperative. I live in Jupiter. I have about close to 30 years experience in water-related issues, potable water, groundwater, stormwater, wastewater. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody here to help solve the issues. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Mullins. I'm Director of Policy and Partnerships with the Everglades Foundation. Started with the organization in January of this year. Prior to that, I was in Washington, D.C. for probably 22 years working on a variety of conservation issues and business issues. So very pleased to be in South Florida working on a very important issue that's important to me personally. The Everglades Foundation is focused on the comprehensive restoration of the Everglades, restoring the flow of fresh water south from the lake all the way to Florida Bay. We're a very forward-thinking, very forward-leaning organization. We're focused on science-based solutions to achieve results. I want to thank the district and what you all are trying to accomplish, and appreciate you all setting up a very diverse mix of a group here to engage in. I think it'll be a great opportunity for discussion. And do want to acknowledge and thank the governor and his vision and leadership for what he's trying to do on Everglades restoration, in particular accelerating restoration progress and towards completion, and seeking also to achieve meaningful and measurable water quality improvement. So again, look forward to a great discussion. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Richard Pinsky. I live about 1 mile from here, 2 miles from here. So I did start out my Florida tenure in Stewart, 1971. So I've been down here and been familiar with all the issues that face South Florida as far as growth goes. I'm with Ackerman. We are the largest law firm in Florida. We got 10 offices. I head up their public policy group, so I move around the state quite a bit, mostly between here and Tallahassee. When the legislature is in Tallahassee, I am there. So I'll be there next week. I'm also president of the Blue Way Trail, Palm Beach County Blue Way Trail. Our entire trail, which goes from Lake Ida, which is in Delray Beach, just south of here, to the C-51, where we connect to the Florida Circumnavigational Trail. And all of our waterways, we're one of the few waterway trails in South Florida, below Lake Okeechobee. Most are in the north of the lake in North Florida, but all of our waterways are under South Florida Water Management control, which we're very happy to be. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and look forward to whatever input I can provide.
And good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Todd Polk, and I think I still have, of course, the distinct privilege of being the youngest member of this team and newest person around here. So I did take the reins officially from Jen Reynolds back in, I would say, October 1st, but we've been down here since August. And as the Deputy Commander for South Florida for Jacksonville District, I have the distinct honor of being your federal sponsor and partner in everything with the South Florida Water Management District. And thank you to you and to the team for inviting me to be here as part of this RAC family. And I would be remiss, of course, if my Office of Counsel will beat me up if I didn't mention that in accordance with all our Federal Advisory Committee acts, I will do everything to share facts and provide the technical assistance. And then, of course, if I can't get it, I've got a long and deep Rolodex of 950 strong to call upon to help answer. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Gary Ritter, Assistant Director with the Government and Community Affairs with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. When I look around the room, I've really had the pleasure to work with many of you all in collaborating on various issues here in South Florida, and I really look forward to the opportunity of working with you on this particular panel here. For those of you that don't know me, I represent agriculture in the partnership that we have provided in water and natural resource issues, science-based solutions as well, and the work that we do here in South Florida as well. I also represent agriculture in Indian River and Brevard counties, Indian River Lagoon. I sit on the Indian River Lagoon Management Council. And I also sit on the Loxahatchee Management Council. And I tell people that this is kind of my second career out of college, because I worked for the South Florida Water Management District for 36 years. And I worked on water regulatory natural resource issues here at the Water Management District, as well as local governments in the Heartland region. And so I think I bring to the table some knowledge of the Heartland region, because I still work in that region in the capacity of sitting on the Heartland Career Source Heartland. and I also serve as the chair of the Children's Services Council in that area. So I think I hopefully can bring some perspective to that area, and I, very much look forward to working with this group in issues as we move forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Benita Whalen. I am the president of a small business, Disperse Water LLC. Engineer by trade. I have over 30 years water resource experience in Florida. 21 years were at South Florida Water Management District. Prior to that, I also had 5 years experience with the federal government with the United States Department of Agriculture. I am representing the Florida Cattlemen's Association. I think, pretty large landowner across the landscape, especially in the northern Everglades, but in Florida in its entirety, and pretty natural land user as far as mixed systems of wetlands and uplands and marsh-type systems. I think it's important to all of Floridians to keep that inner part of the state, intact and functioning. They provide a lot of resources, and I'm not sure that the public at large is aware of all of those benefits. So I think that's one of my roles here today, is to make sure that's shared. But I think all of the watersheds in Florida, including South Florida Water Management District, have large hurdles and restoration and water quality improvement goals that need to be met. I'm very appreciative to be a part of this effort, but I really think we all need to get together and pool our resources, identify funding sources, team up together and get as much implemented as quickly as we can. But I just want to say we have some large hurdles and goals to meet. So with that, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you. Mr. LaPrade, would you like to do a brief introduction?
Sure, thank you. Sorry, being a little late, but coming from way down south. Charles LaPrade, Agricultural Manager, Miami-Dade County. I work for the county, but also represent the agricultural industry, and multi-generational. I've worked in all aspects of agriculture in Miami-Dade County, and we are certainly at the end of the state, and we get a gift of a lot of water from a lot of people and a lot of places, and we're in a wonderful spot between two national parks. So we want to, we have a lot going on down there, and we want to make sure that we are continue to be able to farm, but also take care of the environment and everything else in that area. And glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Drew to say a few words.
Well, thanks everyone for coming today. It's I'm really looking forward to this. This meeting is kind of an introductory meeting, to sort of set the stage. In future meetings, we'll get into some issues and so forth that are more specific in nature, but I really wanted everyone to understand sort of the foundation of where we are, why we are what we are, and, what we will do and what we won't do, as a body, as a forum. And I appreciate all the other folks from coming. I see, Inger, you brought a support team. Good to see you folks. I used to work very closely with them and still do. I appreciate everyone coming, and there will be a time for you to speak as well. And I just want to assure you that your voice in this forum is just as important as anyone sitting at this table to the district, because we want to engage, we want to hear from everyone and be responsive with everyone. So as we go through today, we're just basically going to set the stage. Feel free to ask questions, that type of thing. And then we'll just circle back around towards the end and talk about what we'll do next. From there, I'll turn it back over to you, but thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. Just to echo Drew's remarks, there's been a lot of discussion over some recent meetings on revamping RAC and what the structure is. So I'm going to turn it over to Paula Cobb to give you the RAC orientation overview.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. So back in July of 2019, the governing board approved the charter for this iteration of RAC. And really, the governing board designed this forum to be a recurring forum, a public forum that encourages meaningful dialogue and participation on all of these issues that we know are facing the region. It was also intended to be an information gathering and fact-finding body. So I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail on what this forum is and what this forum is not, and then practically speaking what that means for this group. And then I'll take any questions, of course. So the RAC Public Forum is a fact-finding body supporting the executive director, information gathering body supporting the executive director. The public participants, you, were selected by the executive director. It's also a public forum consisting really of an opportunity for additional public comment and dialogue. As Drew just mentioned, there will absolutely be an opportunity for the non-participants here at the table to speak to district staff and to speak to Drew on all of these key issues. And it's a public forum to facilitate public discussion, participation, comment on all of these critical water management issues, and supply the information and the facts and the diverse perspectives that we need to hear to solve these issues that we're facing. What the forum is not an advisory body providing recommendations to the governing board. It's not an advisory body with members selected by the governing board. It's not an advisory body that's been delegated decision-making authority by the governing board. It's not a body with the authority to vote. And it's not a body where members are restricted from communicating with each other outside of the forum. That doesn't mean it's not an important forum for public dialogue and participation, but it's not an advisory body to the governing board with any sort of delegated decision-making authority. And the reason that's important is bodies like this that are not delegated that decision-making authority from a sunshine body like the governing board is not itself a sunshine body. So the charter was crafted with that in mind. The charter explicitly states that this body is not delegated that decision-making authority. But beyond the charter, what is also important to remember is how the body conducts itself. So it's not just what's written on paper, but it's also how you guys act, as a forum. And so again, what the forum does, this forum will gather facts and relevant information for discussion on all of these really important issues. The forum will provide varied perspectives on all of those issues, improve public participation in these water resource issues, purpose of this forum, and allow for discussion about these water resource issues with any member of the RAC Public Forum, other stakeholders, the public, and others before, during, or after the meetings. But what the forum does not do and will not do, it will not vote, it will not eliminate any options for consideration for the governing board, and it won't provide specific recommendations or advice to the governing board. Again, doesn't mean it's not an important forum for that public discussion to present these diverse perspectives, but it does mean that you're not an advisory body to the board. We do have a separate charter for an advisory body to the board if and when the board thinks a specific issue warrants that, and then that advisory body will be formed with a specific mission in mind, and that body will be subject to sunshine because it will be delegated certain recommending authority and decision-making authority. Again, that's not been stood up yet. Don't know if or when it will be. But your role, this forum's role, is different than that. And so that's why you are not a sunshine body, and you are able to communicate with each other outside of this group. So you will be providing facts, information, and perspectives to Drew, to each other, et cetera, and to the public. Some other considerations that are baked into this forum that really relate to public participation and facilitating public participation. All of these meetings will be publicly noticed ahead of time, at least 7 days in advance, so that the public has an opportunity to plan and to attend and to comment. The forum will have posted topics of discussion to give folks an idea of what's coming at each individual forum discussion. We'll, of course, provide an opportunity for public comment during the public forum. Will be webcast whenever feasible. We'll have posted video afterwards, so if you can't catch it live, you can catch it afterwards to see what was discussed at the forum. And then there will also be posted summaries following the individual forum meetings. And with that, I'll take any questions from any of the participants. Oh, thanks, Kara.
Thanks for that. Really good clarification. How will the agenda and the discussion items be chosen for each meeting?
So Sean, I'm probably going to turn that one over to you.
So I don't want to speak on Drew's behalf, but what we do for these planning meetings is, since they fall under the purview of the executive director, we listen to participants on the forum and then bring them for the executive director review. And then, of course, post that at least 7 days in advance, usually much sooner, I think, or usually much later out, because we want to make sure people have an opportunity. I anticipate that as this forum grows, each quarter, we'll end our meetings and there will be conversations about what we should talk about next time as well. Drew, anything to add to that?
The problem with these mics is it's red-green, and I'm red-green colorblind, so I don't know whether I'm on or not. Yeah, so I mean, basically, what we have right now is a very active board that is very engaged in issues and the details of issues, and so a lot of them, they will want to explore themselves very much so. And so as we think about what they would benefit on hearing from forum participants on perspectives, which includes the audience and people at this table, it'll be one of those balances I'm thinking about, is it board time or is it RAC time, or both, when it comes to agenda items. And so as people on the RAC or in the congregation or anywhere, think there might be a good RAC agenda item, I just want to hear that, and then we can think about it for agenda.
Thank you. I think we have one or two questions maybe as a follow-up. So I want to make sure I understood how you explained it, and I'm without parsing words.
I've got it.
So another way of saying it would be we are a body that's a resource for staff rather than a direct resource for the governing board. Would that be accurate?
Yes, your function is to support Drew.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that the governing board won't hear what's discussed at the forum, but your function is to support the executive director.
Understood, which then leads to the follow-up.
Okay.
So there are two items that I see in the charter under section 152-3 tasks. One is item D and one is item F that uses the phrase gather information for the executive director. So in that functionality of gathering that information, so to understand, Paula, what you were explaining was there will be no determination on our part or weighting or unweighting of information that may take place in that gathering information that would constitute a decision that would then be subject to sunshine. So how does the functionality of that gathering of the information for the executive director work in the real world?
So what I would say is part of the reason there's such a diverse, background chosen for this is to bring all of that information forward so it's not kind of winnowed down before it gets here. But at the end of the day, the functionality of the group is not deliberative. It's not decision-making. And so that's really the dispositive question that the Supreme Court looks at over and over and over in the sunshine context is whether that body has been delegated decision-making authority and how it conducts itself. So explicitly, this body has not been delegated that decision-making authority, and you will not be conducting yourselves in a way that deliberates, that winnows down, options for the board, et cetera. So both from a charter written standpoint and also from a functional perspective, you're not going to be undertaking activities that puts you into that deliberative decision-making camp.
Thank you. Understood.
Gary?
Yeah, I just kind of want to follow up on that and what Kara said, and maybe, am I understanding correctly then that we're going to be discussing many of the governor's initiatives, and that because this board has we're a pretty diverse group, that based on what you have said, we will be tasked with providing facts, information, and perspectives to Drew on these various projects and opportunities that the governor has set forth. Would that be correct?
I think that's an accurate way to put it. Oh, yes, please.
Thanks, Paula. I think that sort of leads into my question, which was, we see that these are scheduled for quarterly meetings. Is there a potential that to provide timely comment, timely input and feedback, there might be interim or other meetings scheduled for this group?
I'm going to turn that again over to either Sean or Drew.
Is that green? Okay. It's a potential, yeah. I mean, right now. And that all gets back to, we have monthly board meetings. They're really engaged. They want to hear all the details and that kind of thing. And if we just gets too big a workload for a board or something, that I need to start thinking about things in advance and understanding all the perspectives, whether you're here or not, from staff, from everywhere. We might be able to do some interim ones, but I'm just going to play that by ear.
Any other questions for me? Adam?
Not so much of a question, but just as I'd be remiss in not bringing to light that the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force, which is comprised of federal, state, tribal members in the community from Sanibel and other state partners, that this body is an advisory body directly to the task force. And so I think it's something that needs to be considered, that there is an advisory seat for you, Drew, or for the chair of this group to bring forward those issues to those task force related meetings. So as part of the other operational components that may be pertinent for this topic. Thank you.
And I think along those lines, the reason we haven't assigned someone to the task force that represents RAC is because RAC is not an advisory body itself, right? So RAC is a forum where we can hear and hear all the perspectives and facts and so forth. And so I probably need to get with you to figure out whether that really should be a seat or not. Right now, I'm thinking it shouldn't.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I was going to ask Mr. Osceola if you wouldn't mind doing a brief introduction. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry for being late. My name is Cicero Osceola. I'm the chairman, executive administrator for the Seminole Tribe. I've been on the RAC committee before, and I am the alternate. Alex Johns couldn't make it today, so I'm the alternate today, so I'm here today. But I do like hearing all the information that we're talking about, just kind of looking at everything, and I think hopefully we'll move in a positive way on that point as this committee moves forward. So just want to say good morning.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Leeds. She's going to give an overview of the district's role in key Everglades restoration projects from the governor's Achieving More Now for Florida's Environment Executive Order 1912. And then Drew's going to give a review of the governor's state budget and recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year.
Good morning. So I have the pleasure this morning of presenting to you some of the key Everglades restoration projects that the district is working on and the status of those. So, as many of you know, back in January, Governor DeSantis signed Executive Order 1912, Achieving More Now for Florida's Environment, and that executive order put a spotlight on water quality and some of the key Everglades restoration projects. So to highlight some of those, I'm going to look at 5 of the 29 priority projects that we have for Everglades restoration and how the district is moving forward to work in support of those goals of the executive order and where those projects are at in their status. In addition to that, we have a web page that keeps the public informed of those 29 priority projects. It's very easy to get to. It's sfwmd.gov/achievemorenow. It highlights all 29 projects. It has an interactive map. You can click on any one of those. It'll give you a brief description and a status of that and kind of what are the next upcoming milestones. So out of those 29 priority projects, we kind of group them into 6 major groupings. Those that are under the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. We have projects that are incorporated into our Northern Everglades and Estuaries program, our Restoration Strategies program, which focuses on water quality. Operational modifications, we have them grouped into foundation projects, and then we have other restoration projects. All of those are major groupings in which you can find those 29 projects underneath that. So to start, we'll first talk about the EA Reservoir project. So it's not just the reservoir itself. We have 3 major components that are a part of what we call the EAA Reservoir project. We have the reservoir, in which the Corps has the lead on designing and constructing. We have the stormwater treatment area that the Water Management District has taken the lead on. And then we also have these canal conveyance improvements that the Water Management District has the lead on. Let me see if I can get my mouse going. So this is actually a map of the Central Everglades Planning Project, but we're looking at this area here that's kind of has a circle around it. This is what we call the A2 site. The A1 FEB is just off to the right of it, to the east, and then we have the Miami Canal that's over here on the west side. And so we're looking at putting the reservoir on this A2 site and the STA here. The canal conveyance improvements are the North New River, which bounds it on this side, and then the Miami Canal to the west. So focusing in on the stormwater treatment area. So currently the Water Management District is expediting this design. And this is more of a focused in map of what we just looked at. You can see the A2 STA, which is located here, right adjacent to the reservoir. This reservoir is going to hold 240,000 acre-feet worth of water. The A2 STA is a 6,500 acre STA to clean some of the new water that's going to come down from Lake Okeechobee. And then it also sits right next to the A1 FEB. Then to the south of that, we have STA 3-4, and then to the east is also STA 2. When the reservoir and the A2 STA are complete, this will all give us much greater operational flexibility, and it's all designed to work together. We can bring water into the reservoir. If we have capacity in the A2 STA, it'll move here. We can also move it over into the A1 FEB. From there, it can go into STA 3-4 or over to STA 2. So we have currently permits that have been submitted to construct the inflow-outflow canal. Once we receive those permits, we can go out and start constructing that feature. For the rest of the STA features, we can start construction. We're looking to start that in late 2020 and have the entire A2 STA complete in 2024. Next, I want to move a little bit further south in the system. This is the Old Tamiami Trail Removal Project. It's also one of our Central Everglades Planning Project features. Primarily, it includes the removal of 6 miles of roadway, roughly between the L67 Extension Canal, moving further over to the west to the Shark Valley Visitor Center. And there's 6 miles of road there, and there's also some power lines there. This is one of the projects that will help to open the southern end of the system and move water from Area 3 into Everglades National Park. But because we have some existing power lines just to the south of the old road, we have to relocate those power lines to the north of the new Tamiami Trail. So right now, FPL actually began working to relocate this power in October, this October in 2019. We're expecting them to complete relocating those power poles by mid-2020. At the December governing board, we're going to take a contract to the board for consideration to start removing the old road, and we intend to sequence this. So once the power is relocated to the north side of Tamiami Trail and FPL comes back and starts removing, you can actually, this is actually a picture of the old Tamiami Trail here. These power lines, we'll sequence that as they're removing the power lines, we'll come in with our contractor and start removing the roadway. We expect the road to be completed, the construction to be removed, everything by November of 2021. Next, I'd like to move on to the west side of the system and highlight the Caloosahatchee River Reservoir. So just a few months ago, actually I think it was about 6 weeks ago, feels like a few months ago, we were out, the governor was down, we had an event to celebrate the final phase of starting construction for the earthwork and the embankment of this reservoir. So again, the C43, the Caloosahatchee Reservoir, is located right here. And it is designed to take in water off the Caloosahatchee River during high times, during high flow times, store that water, and then during the dry season, when the estuary is looking for some of those minimum flows and levels and some of that restorative flows to the estuary to help keep some of the salinity at bay, we can then release the water out of that reservoir down in towards the estuary. This is a slightly smaller reservoir than the EAA. It only holds 170,000 acre-feet worth of water. Still very large. And we expect substantial completion of this feature in 2023. Now, as part of the governor's executive order, we also are now looking at adding a water quality feature that will work in conjunction with the Caloosahatchee River Reservoir. So we have started working on a feasibility study. And what this feasibility study will do is it will look at opportunities to provide additional treatment to improve the water quality. And the feasibility study is looking at either do we want to treat the water before it gets into the reservoir? Is it after after the water is released from the reservoir? Does it get treated? It's also evaluating different treatment technologies and options. It's looking at what existing treatment technologies there are out there. Are they scalable? Are they implementable for what we're looking for? And also, more importantly, too, is the siting of this. Where should this treatment feature be sited? And also, how big does it need to be able to achieve the goals of what it is? So once this feasibility study is complete, we'll be able to take that and then move into the next phase of that, looking at what we would do with a type of a treatment facility. So with this, we just kicked it off back in September. We had a public meeting over in Fort Myers. This is also being done with an advisory group made of local stakeholders. There are public meetings looking to solicit information and ideas and get feedback from some of the folks who are also experts in the field. There are several public meetings that are coming up in January, March, and July as the team works to draft a feasibility study. Again, they'll look at various alternatives, different types of technologies, siting, and as they go through, they'll put that draft feasibility study together, and then they're looking to finalize it in October of 2020, and then all that hard work and effort will then be presented back to the public to show what the results of that were and what the next steps will be in November of 2020. So moving over onto the West Coast, where we're going to talk about the C44 Reservoir and STA. Again, on this one, the Water Management District has the lead on building the STA, and the Corps is working on the reservoir right now. We recently had an event just a couple of weeks ago. The governor came down for it. The STA is almost complete. We have certain cells that are complete right now. You can see in this picture, these are temporary pumps that are put in while the reservoir is still being constructed. This allows us to pull water in from the C44 and go ahead, and we started initially flooding the STA cells. As some of the other STA cells are complete, very shortly we'll also look at putting water into those cells, getting some grow in, start getting some optimization start getting ahead of that. So here is where the C-44 STA and reservoir are located. You got Lake Okeechobee right here. This facility is able to pull in not only basin runoff, but also discharges from Lake O. Again, the Corps has the lead on constructing the reservoir, and they're anticipating that completion in late of 2021. So the next few slides, I'm just going to finish up and focus on restoration strategies. This has been ongoing since 2013. This is looking at improving water quality going into the Everglades protection area. It brought in a new type of treatment technology, which we call flow equalization basins. And we also looked at expanding some of our stormwater treatment areas to get down to meet those state water quality standards. So many of you are familiar with this map. Restoration strategies roughly broke up the EAA basins into what we call flow paths. And those flow paths feed into some of the existing STAs that the district currently operates. So we have the eastern flow path, which flows into STA1 East and STA1 West. And then we looked at putting a deep flow equalization basin here just to the north of that. That's the L8 FEB. We're also looking at expanding STA1 West, which we have two expansion projects for that, one just adjacent to it and one a little bit further to the south. Because of all this infrastructure, we needed some additional conveyance, so we put that in up in this area here. We have the central flow path, which has the A1 flow equalization basin, and that feeds into STA2 and STA3-4. And then over to the west, in the western flow path, all of this water in the C139 basin comes into STA5-6, and we have two features over here looking at doing some work within STA5-6 itself and also the C139 FEB. And we'll quickly go over where all those projects, their status are at. So in the eastern flow path, many of the projects have been completed already. The conveyance projects that we had, that we talked about, the L8 divide structure, the S5AS modifications, and some expansion in STA1 East, we call it the S375, all those have been complete. We've also completed the L8 flow equalization basin. It's operational and functioning. We have also just recently completed the construction for the first phase of expansion for STA1 West. The second phase of expansion is currently in design, and we're looking at that construction starting in November of 2020. And then the last piece we have in the eastern flow path is what we call the G341 and related conveyance improvements, and we're looking at some of the canals that go across the EAA, the Bowles Canal, where we're improving the conveyance capacity there. We looked at 4 different segments. So segments 1 through 3 have been complete, and segment 4 right now is in construction. In this photo that you see here, this is actually a picture recently taken of the 1 West Area Expansion number 1 that was just completed. For the central flow path, the A1 FEB, this was one of the first features we completed under restoration strategies. It was completed back in 2015. It is a shallow flow equalization basin. It means it gets up to 4 feet with the water. It's vegetated. It's performed actually beyond our expectations. It does a very good job of uptaking phosphorus before putting water into STA3-4. So this has worked out quite well. And then the last is the western flow path. So we had 2 features under this. One, we did some internal improvements with an STA5-6. When STA5 was constructed, on the western side of some of those cells, there were some high spots. They weren't really functioning all that well. So we went in and kind of leveled those off, kind of expanded the treatment capacity of this STA. And then the other feature is a flow equalization basin that's sitting on the northern portion of the C139 annex. It's currently in design. We expect that design to be complete in October of 2020. And we're looking to start construction of this feature in January of 2021. And so with that, that is my quick update. And again, this is the website that you can go to on our homepage, and it will allow you to see where all these 29 priority projects are listed. You can get the status of those, and you can kind of follow along where we're at with that.
Any questions? Kara?
Thanks, Jennifer. I love that presentation, and I just want to really commend the district. I love the transparency with where all the projects are. As an advocate, it's so helpful to be able to look at a project and say, this is the expected completion date, this is the agency that's handling this portion, this is what we anticipate as the next step. So it's a wonderful tool when I'm communicating with decision makers. I guess my question is, so all of the expected completion dates on the projects that were shown, are those dependent on the legislature going along with the governor's recurring funding request? Or could we see those dates slip if the legislature does not follow through with the governor's strong request?
Good question. They are scheduled out based on the governor's budget request. Yep. Yes, let's work on supporting that, and that'll be the next presentation. There are projects that we didn't talk about that we are doing as well, and I know this group is from all around the state, and so if you have questions about other projects that we are undertaking and just were not in the presentation, please feel free to ask about those as well.
James Evans, City of Sanibel. So I want to thank the governor and the district for moving forward with the feasibility study for the water quality component for the C-43 reservoir. It's really important for treating the water that leaves a reservoir. And that's approximately an 18-month process, and we're probably about 2-3 months into it. I just had a question on, as we transition to identifying a water quality treatment component for that project, how will we schedule the planning and development of that project?
It's a good question. So, we don't just have the water quality feasibility study, right? So we're also doing some work over on the BOMA site. I think some of the work and some of the research work that's going on over there as well that we recently kicked off to kind of answer some of the questions. I think, like I've said before, the district is really good at developing water quality improvement projects that can remove phosphorus. But we still have a few unanswered questions on some of the nitrogen aspects on that. What types of plants, how are they sequenced, depth of water, how fast does the water need to move through. So I think as we move forward with the information that we're getting on that will not only help feed into what we're going to be doing on BOMA, but I think that information will also feed into what's going on with the water quality feasibility study, right? To help give us that idea on how big do we need to make a facility, what does that facility look like, what are we trying to get at and reduce. And I think we all anticipate doing that kind of in an open public forum. And so once we get to the end of some of those and get to where we're at to answer some of the questions, I think then the next step on that is, taking that information and how do we move forward to the next step.
Thank you.
Any more? Go ahead.
I have too many questions. The water quality, so there will be at some point public input to get at our charge concerning those baseline goals. In other words, water quality is in the eye of the beholder, you could say. So those decisions come from public input, I assume, and that starts with the baseline, so you know what that delta is, what you're trying to get to, which would then determine, and this is the question, whether you're doing it at the front end or the back end or other strategies for water quality.
So, there's so many contexts you could be speaking about. I've been doing water quality a long time, and so a lot of the fortunate thing is in Florida and in South Florida, we do have a lot of water quality goals established, like total maximum daily loads, the water quality standards. Those are all have been established over time, so we kind of know where we're shooting at. And then it's just a matter of combining the plans, whether they're source control plans or regional treatment plans, but those all have to be put together in a way that when you add up all the expected reductions, it achieves that goal. And most of those goals are really established in either regulation or secretary order or statute, depending on the scenario. So I'm not sure the specifics of your question, but I don't know if that general answer gets at it or if there was a more specific situation you were.
Generally, again, what is coming out of the lake, for example, has a certain water quality or
Right.
degraded water quality. And then you're trying to achieve, I suppose, what that water quality would be if the use is for agriculture, the use is going to be used for a consumptive use permit. So would that determine those? So how do you, as the executive director, get that public input to say, here's everybody's competing interests, here's what's going in, we think the water quality should be X at the back end of the reservoir or at the front end? Those are, how do you get the public input?
So, okay, for C-43, the feasibility study is what you're talking about, coming out of the lake, going down the C-43. And that, we actually have a steering committee that includes, James, I know you're on it, but it has Lee County and some other cities in the area, plus some local scientists on a steering committee looking at and guiding that whole feasibility study, which involves setting those goals on what comes out of the reservoir. So, James, you're probably, or Jennifer, you're more integrated into that process, but you might want to speak to it.
So right now, we don't have an exact target of what % reduction. We know that we have a TMDL for the Caloosahatchee. It's 23% reduction in total nitrogen. But we don't know based on whether we do the treatment in or before going into the reservoir, while in the reservoir, or leaving the reservoir. We're just not sure. That's the whole idea behind the feasibility study, to figure out, what land's available, if additional land is needed, what types of treatment technologies there are out there today to get the most removal that we can, whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus, dissolved inorganic nitrogen versus organic nitrogen. We really don't know until we go through that feasibility study process. And at that point, we'll figure out, based on a cost-benefit analysis, what's going to be the best removal and how much we can, remove. So that's, we're just at the beginning of the process now. Like I said, it's about an 18-month process. We're at about, 2 months into it, 3 months into it, so we'll know more as we get closer to the end of that. And then we'll be making recommendations, and there'll be a number of alternatives that'll be recommended.
And as part of that process, there's routine scheduled public meetings to engage the public for that kind of input.
That's the point of the question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Jen. We'll turn it over to Drew to tell us about the governor's budget recommendations.
Fabulous. All right. So the governor announced his budget request a week or two ago, maybe it was 3. Time flies when Thanksgiving intervenes. And it was exciting. So basically, he has Achieve More Now for Florida's Environment Executive Order. And in that executive order, he said we need $2.5 billion over the next 4 years for the Everglades and for water resources protection. And in this budget, this is sort of a record-setting budget request with this amount of $625 million. And of course, when we talk about this incredible budget request, you have to put a picture of a really handsome-looking guy in that picture, and I'll let you figure out who that is. So some of the details of that budget is basically continued investment in Everglades restoration, $322 million for projects associated with improving the Everglades and northern Everglades, and then $200 million for water quality improvement. It's not lost on us the impacts of harmful algae blooms that we experienced in recent years. And so the focus on water quality improvement has been paramount, both in the governor's executive order and in his budget requests. And then as recently, he came down and visited and announced his real investment in the ecosystem as well when it came to python removal. Pythons are an exotic invasive in the Everglades, and they're eating the wildlife, and we want to protect that wildlife. So he also increased his investment through FWC for python removal, and the district is contributing to that program as well with our budget. So a little more details for Everglades restoration, $170 million for SERP. Obviously, we're continuing to build the C-43 reservoir plus other things. And then the $64 million for the EAA reservoir project. And we are ready to pounce on that project as soon as we get our permits. Right, Colonel? Sorry. And then we have obviously the $47 million for Northern Everglades because we are trying to not only tackle source controls in the Northern Everglades, but also do some regional treatment by building projects on district lands within those Everglades watersheds, and also enter into and continue public-private partnerships through dispersed water management to try to capture water as it steamrolls towards Lake Okeechobee in the two estuaries and store it on land and get some water quality improvement as well. And then, of course, the continued investment in restoration strategies, which Jennifer Leeds was talking about, making sure that water is clean when it enters the Everglades is paramount for us. We have a deadline of 2025 to get that done, and we are laser focused on making sure that water quality is where it needs to be for the Everglades. When it comes to water quality improvement, this is in DEP's budget. That's $200 million for targeted water quality improvements. And right now we know across the state, and it happens here in South Florida as well as other parts of the state, is $150 million for improvement grants. And that could be septic conversions and upgrades. If you're pulling people off neighborhoods off of septic systems, you also might need to add advanced wastewater treatment to your water treatment plant or expand that water treatment plant. So this state has a septic system issue when it comes to water quality for our springs and our estuaries, and so the department is laser focused on that effort. In addition to that, we know that stormwater treatment is important. We have neighborhoods that have nice lawns. No matter what we do, we certainly have ordinances to improve water quality when it comes to fertilizer, but treating the water that comes off the streets is also critically important. And so stormwater treatment upgrades is part of that budget as well. And then there is a $50 million pot to basically implement basin management action plans, which craft lots of ideas about water quality improvements. It could be septic to sewer, it could be stormwater, it could be regional projects, cost share projects with local landowners. A lot of ideas come out of basin management action plans, and so there's a $50 million request to push forward any of those projects on an expedited basis. And thank you, Governor DeSantis. When I was at DEP, these kind of budgets didn't roll into those kind of programs, and now they certainly are. And so that's very exciting to see. And, you know, in some of these pots, the Water Management District, if we have projects, we might be able to pursue some of those funds as well as a district. Don't worry, local governments, I won't try to compete with you. And so we have the last thing we had is the Python program. This involves expanding our hunter program, which is very effective. Once people are trained to see these pythons, they're much better at hunting them. But it also involves research, you know, possibly hunting dogs or obviously sentinel snakes, but partnering with universities to do research to try to figure out better ways to try to capture and remove pythons, control pythons is certainly part of that program as well. So we have, you know, the next level investment in Everglades restoration. We are full steam ahead. The Corps is full steam ahead as a good partner on moving these projects. We've done recent groundbreakings, recent ribbon cuttings, and we plan a lot of those in our future. And as you look at all the projects we are implementing in Everglades Restoration, you see a lot coming online between now and 2023, whether they're an east reservoir, a west reservoir, a stormwater treatment area in the south, southern uncorking Tamiami Trail. A lot of projects are coming online in a very short amount of time, and which is very exciting. And then we've got the incredible new investment that the Water Management District is doing on projects north of the lake, looking at all of our lands north of the lake, looking at stormwater treatment areas, any other types of opportunities there, which gets to the Northern Everglades budget and those water quality budgets that the governor is asking for. So there's a lot of opportunity right now, and certainly I'm excited about taking advantage of it. All right. Any questions? Yes, Doug.
Thanks, Drew. That's very helpful. I also want to just recognize the governor's focus and initiatives on water quality. On the water quality slide, it's $200 million. This may be a question for the uninitiated to these processes, but that's a statewide number, right? So do you have any idea or thoughts about how that may be broken out in terms of what will benefit the area that's under the jurisdiction of the South Florida Water Management District?
I'm happy to take a shot at that, Inger, unless you would like to, but I'm familiar with their processes. So that is a statewide number, and it is not allocated per region. And I know that as we implement BMAPs, whether they're springs BMAPs, estuary BMAPs, lake BMAPs, there's a statewide solicitation, and everybody comes in, and it's basically always ranked on the same type of principles: bang for the buck, readiness to proceed, and maximizing match dollars, right? So that's the basic principles and tenets. That kind of dollar figure leaves it to a point where if you're ready, DEP is ready to help. You know, with that kind of dollar amount, that's my experience, is that they're, you know, if whoever's ready, whether it's a local government or ever, if they're ready, DEP will be ready to help.
Well, this is an exciting time. You know, it was only a few years ago that when the leaders of the Everglades Coalition got together and said, how much money should we advocate for in Tallahassee for the Everglades this year? We talked about $100 million, and people said, no, that's too ambitious. It was half of what we needed for SERP, and yet here we are this year with a governor who wants to triple that, or more than triple that. So very exciting. And certainly MPCA has started to work with some of the local appropriators who are headed up to Tallahassee to extend our strong support for the governor's proposal. We've met no opposition or concerns so far. I think people are understanding the value of restoring the Everglades, which is beautiful. My question is on the very helpful breakdown slide of the Everglades budget, there's $170 million for SERP. So if we are fast forwarding to March and it's the end of session and we get that money, then does the responsibility come back to you, to the district, to the board, about how that 170 is broken down, like this much for C43, C44? When does that budget process pick up?
Good question. And basically that's working between the Water Management District and Department of Environmental Protection and the governor's office, essentially, on what we need to make sure continues. And I can tell you a lot of that on the district side is focused on the C43 reservoir, because that's mid-construction, and really moving forward expeditiously on the EAA stormwater treatment area. But also embedded in that budget is planning dollars for like Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetlands Phase 2 and other things like that. I think any kind of SEP foundation, I think we're still working on the 333 North, that may be fully funded, Old Tamiami Trail. So a lot of the other, features that are underway might be embedded in that as well. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Benita?
Thank you for that information, Drew. I did have a question, though, and I'm not sure it's tied to the funding specifically. But there's a lot of growth, future growth going to occur for Florida with the influx of visitors and, the plan, just expansion of visitors. I just wonder how that fits into the existing planning that's going on. Are projects considering future growth in areas? Just if you could just discuss how that expansion and growth in Florida is being addressed in the existing plan for projects and then potentially future projects.
Yeah, I can give it a shot. And that really gets at water quality and alternative water supply, water quality features. And so there's just a lot of avenues I could run down on future growth planning. What I'll talk about is water quality, right? And so as we find areas that, and this is sort of DEP's lead on it, and it's through the Basin Management Action Plan, but as we find areas that are stressed by septic tanks, for example, or wastewater treatment discharge, or those types of things, in the Basin Management Action Plan process, we'll embed policies about placement of future septic tanks, or about what wastewater treatment expectations needs to occur. And I think part of this, the Blue-Green Algae Task Force has been looking at this as well and come up with a series of recommendations on stormwater rules, improved stormwater rules, so that as we see future growth, we know our stormwater systems are capable of treating the water quality for those, for that future growth. So it really gets down to what is the source of pollution and how can we make sure we grow in a smart way that doesn't exacerbate that source of pollution. And as we talk about this budget line of the $150 million for septic conversions, that conversation comes up every time. Well, are we stemming the tide when it comes to new septic tanks? And what we're talking about there is septic tanks clustered in neighborhoods. A septic tank on a farm is not what you're concerned about. You're worried about 100 homes on quarter-acre lots near a canal that feeds an estuary. That's what you're worried about. And so you don't need to proliferate that. And so as BMAPs are adopted and those types of things happen, that's where you start to implement those policies about, hey, let's not exacerbate this problem while we're trying to retrofit it. It's kind of what happened in the Keys. They're not doing that anymore. They've retrofitted the Keys. It was a great effort. It took a long time and a lot of money, but it's in a good spot now. So that's that's one rambling way of trying to get at that very complex question. I'm going to sit down.
I kind of want to follow up with that a little bit, and I when Benita started her question, I'm thinking, man, she's sitting here reading my mind. But as you know, I sat on the biosolids task force, and there's a rule that's come out that has kind of compressed, in my mind, the ability of agriculture now to utilize the biosolids and take those from municipalities. As I see, $150 million is not a lot of money, especially when you're looking at septic tank conversions and you're looking at maybe 1,000 people a day coming into Florida. Some of those hopefully won't be on septic tanks, but others will. So there's going to be, in my mind, a generation of more biosolids, and maybe this is more of a question for municipalities in our membership here. How do they ramp up with new technologies to deal with biosolids if we have less and less that we're going to use agriculture with provide that service? That, to me, the technology portion of it is going to be extremely expensive, and that $150 million doesn't appear to even scrape the surface for that.
Any local government want to take that one? No? Let Drew do it. That's fine.
I could help. Mm-hmm. You have to start somewhere. I think when we look at some of the challenges that we face as a society, water quality and a burgeoning population, you have to start somewhere. You can't replace all the septic tanks throughout the state all at once. And so the thing to do is to prioritize based upon areas that are actually having impacts. As far as working with agriculture, I guess the question is there any opportunity for looking at the way biosolids have been applied? Is there an opportunity for changing the way they've been used so that they can continue to provide a service both to agriculture and that agriculture can provide the service of getting rid of some of the biosolids? Maybe there's sort of a dual-pronged approach to solving the water quality problem because we keep growing people and they need a place to be. And I grew up in Miami and I've lived there my whole life and I've watched the population double in my lifetime. And it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. We have to find a place for people to live. We'll have to live more densely. When we get new developed, the state law and the county code requires for people to connect to sewers when they're available, when they're close enough. We need to look at the regulations, maybe require a little more connection where it's feasible, but I agree with Drew. We don't need to replace every septic tank in the state because it doesn't make sense to send a pipe 10 miles west to catch 10 pieces of property, but it's where it's dense, it's close to areas where it can get to the surface waters. That's the area to focus on first, and then continue to revisit this challenge over the years to come and address the issue as we can. That would be my 2 cents.
With respect to the $150 million, it is to deal with the septic tank issue in the state of Florida. It's billion, maybe multi-billion-dollar issue. And that's an issue that, as it was done in the Keys, requires local, state, federal, all kinds of investment from all kinds of areas and some creativity on the financing to basically offset the homeowner's cost to the point where there's not, pitchforks in the street, right? So it's pulling all those resources together. And it all starts with education of the public because everyone's septic tank is usually working just fine. And so it takes some understanding as to why you're going to rip up their streets, right? So it's a process you have to implement over time. And so getting all the money necessary at once is not really meaningful because you can't spend it all at once. And so as I've seen in our spring systems and our estuary systems, what you really have to craft is like a 10 or 15-year plan to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and sequence them with design and education and everything so that you can be successful after year 20, right? And so when it comes to the state contribution, that $150 million is a great number. From what I've seen, as far as local governments being ready to take advantage of state funding, there's no excuse now because that is probably enough for who's ready. And as I was there, I'd work with all the counties up and down the Indian River Lagoon, all the counties and all the spring sheds to try to craft that 10 and 15 and 20-year plan because some of them are ready to start now. Some will be ready in 3 years. They're all in different places when it comes to that kind of investment. Mm-hmm.
And I might add just a little perspective. So for the last 9 years, the legislature has appropriated between 40 to 50 million, but not just for septic tank. That's also been for water projects. So local government water projects, which include septic tank, has been funded every year to 40 or 50. Just septic for 150 is significant. The governor's to be congratulated and applauded. 150 will make a big impact like we've never seen before.
And just to follow up on the comment by Benita, who I've not met but look forward to working with you, I would absolutely agree that restoration and growth management have to go hand in hand. The latter part is outside of the purview of this agency and the decision makers here, but it has long been a priority of MPCA and many of our Everglades advocate colleagues to bring back strong statewide oversight of planning. To make sure that we are filling in those urban areas and leaving the western areas here in Palm Beach County and in other counties, really focusing our development in a smart way. Separately, I serve on the Palm Beach County Planning Commission. We see a lot of applications to develop in the agricultural reserve, which was intended to be a place for conservation lands and food production. So this is, again, not an issue for maybe this body and this agency, but an important one as we look to the future of our state. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you. Go ahead, James.
Thank you. Drew, thank you for the great presentation and overview of the budget. I'd just like to take a moment, more of a comment than a question, and highlight the focus and thank the governor for his focus on python management and highlight that in terms of invasive exotic species and python management. So everybody in this room and everybody on this forum understands the platform. There is no daylight between our agencies, Drew, and I think you're well aware of that, and everybody should know that it's really one problem. With multiple agencies and multiple hands pitching in for a solution, we can get the quality right, which we're talking about here. We can get the quantity right, and we can get the timing and distribution right, working with the engineers of the district and the Corps. But the pythons will be happy to be in that ecosystem, whether it's right or whether we don't get it right. So managing the pythons is a little bit of a separate issue, but integral to the conservation component, the conservation goals of Everglades restoration. So really appreciative of that, and we're looking forward to a really great year. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We're going to move on to public comment. We are not doing comment cards, so we'll just ask that you come to the podium and we'll just kind of line up behind you. And please, just 3 minutes. Any public comment? Okay. Oh, okay. Mark? Wait.
I mean, just a comment to say it's good to see this body assembled. It's going to be an interesting forum to be able to talk about and discuss a lot of water quality issues around our state, and I look forward to it. Served on RAC many years ago for about 10 years, but it's a good body, and I look forward to doing it. Take care.
Thank you. Is there any other board comment? Richard.
On the charter, I have it somewhere. Oh, from a public forum perspective, I noticed in the charter there was a list of agencies that we were to avail ourselves of for public input. And they're mostly state agencies, including you, Lieutenant Colonel. And, but I was wondering if it was intentional or unintentional, but I thought it may be helpful from a public perspective to include the governor's science officer, Tom Frazier, and the governor's resiliency officer, Dr. Julia Neshaway, as a resource. And I don't know about the rest of the colleagues on this public forum, but the general public, I think, would benefit from hearing their charge, their role, and how they play into the water cycle management that the state's doing. So I don't know if that takes a charter change or that's just a suggestion to pass on to the executive director.
Thanks. Any comment or thought? Nope. Green.
So I can talk to them, see, I mean, at a minimum, they could come and just be available for a meeting and present and have a conversation, certainly. But I can reach out to them and talk to them.
And one more question. I'm looking at the dates of the meetings. Would now be appropriate time to ask about a certain date?
Well, you can't make it.
Like February 27th, it's a Thursday. It will be winding down to like the last 2 weeks of session. Don't know what your role or staff's role may be in keeping a close watch. I know where I'll be on February 27th. Is there a chance to move it to February 28th on a Friday?
I'll look at that. Usually as it winds down, they're on the floor. You may have a different role, but certainly our role isn't going to be as active, when they're on the floor. So we'll look at that, though.
Last call. All right, well, thank you all very much. My only other last comment was going to be for our next board meeting, but we will look at the 28th versus the 27th and let everyone know right away. Thank you all so much for coming. Any other last comments, Drew?
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. As we look towards the end of February, I'm not sure what will unfold, but if you have any ideas on discussion topics, just feel free to reach out to me, Sean, or Jen, and we'll put it on the list and see what we can do. So I appreciate everyone's attending, and we'll see you in a couple months. Maybe 3.